Ko'i noa, ana kaivahine mekoristin kanga. Genealogy to me is family history, is to finding your roots, where you came from, who you came from, and something to leave behind for your posterity. So I knew my mom and I knew my grandparents, but then I got to memorize my great-grandparents on both sides. So I guess I was about 12 when I first really started getting interested in genealogy. And now that I have grandchildren going to explorations, they're interested in genealogy because they have to trace their Hawaiian heritage back as well. When I went to Kamehameha schools, I just was conscious of the 4 generations. That's all I was required, okay? But my mother always had a book of remembrance and had everybody's family group sheet. She had all her brothers and sisters and their children and her parents and their children. And so my mother, because of her interest in genealogy and because we always had books lying around the house and pictures and stuff, I got interested because I liked going through her books. But I remember going to school in the 8th grade, and I met a boy whose name was Teddy Blake. And I said, Blake, where are you from? He said, he's from Koloa, Kauai. I said, that's where my grandmother's from. He said, who's your grandmother? Kealoha Blake. And as we talked, his grandfather is my great-grandfather. We just kind of found that in school. I said, oh, so your grandfather had a baby is my grandmother's father. But, you know, somebody was always jumping the fence back then, and my mom said my tutu was always jumping the fence. So anyway, we got to be cousins, so that was good. We just became friends and cousins. So it's kind of fun to find out you're related to somebody you didn't know you were related to.
If someone wanted to start their genealogy, where would they begin?
With your birth certificate. On your birth certificate, it says who your parents are. And then you can go get your parents' birth certificates, and they would say who their parents were, if you didn't know who your parents were. So I would start there, but one of the funnest places that we have to start with is on FamilySearch.org. It's an LDS family history genealogy base that's so vast. So start with your name, address, and birth date, and if you have your parents' name, and then you could work backwards from there. You'd have to be working backwards, because you already know what forwards is like, how many kids you have and your grandkids and stuff, but going backwards is kind of fun.
What is your experience about the importance of genealogy?
Is to find out who you can marry and who you can't marry. You know, when I got married, I married somebody from New Zealand. I'm perfectly safe. I can't marry any of his cousins. But when we live in Hau'ula, I came from Kaneohe in town, so I told my kids they could marry anybody they wanted to because we're not related to anybody out here. Well, then one of my daughters married a Ka'io/Kamai, and they're related to everybody, so they have to check their genealogy to make sure they're not marrying their cousins. But it's important to keep track of your family history and who's related. I mean, sometimes it requires, it involves lands or titles, and you want to be part of that if you can be. I remember my grandfather was a judge on Molokai, and so when he passed away, he left a piece of land to his children. And so when my father died, my mother inherited it. We inherited, the 4 kids inherited his portion because it's direct line, but we just signed everything over to my mom. She got maybe $5,000 after they sold the property. Small kind stuff, but still every dollar helps. So you need to keep track of who's related to who and how. So to get started, I'd say bring your birth certificate, and we'll get started with your name and your parents' name and work from there. And if you have siblings, we'd put in their information. Dates are important, birth dates, wedding dates, married dates. Every time I go to a family reunion, especially one I've never gone before on my husband's side, where most of them are non-members, I'm like, what's your birth dates? What's your married's name? What's your middle name? What's your wife's maiden name? So we can get all this information. I have it on napkins that I go and transcribe to my computer when I go home, or paper towels, or whatever letter envelope I happen to have, and I just write stuff on it and I input it in the computer. Sometimes they always ask for information later on for land titles in New Zealand. They want to know how we're related to what tribe and things like that. So it's good to get as much information as you possibly can, whether you're going to use it or not. To start, I would go straight up the line. Me, my parents, their parents, their parents, their parents. And then I'd start with me and my siblings. And then I'd go with their kids and my kids. And then I'd go to my mom's siblings and do their thing. And then to my dad's siblings and do their thing. But I find sometimes if you go on one line, you're closer to that line. Like we're closer to my mom's side than we were ever to my dad's side. So we go back on the Karates a lot easier than we go back on the McCorriston side, McCorriston Campbell side. But it's fun. It's so fun.